No, there was always music in my house. My dad, who is a painter, but played drums and played soprano sax and clarinet when he was in the Army and stuff. When he got out, he swapped his soprano sax and his clarinet for this great old set of drums, a big 26-inch bass drum and a Ludwig Black Beauty snare, which I wish I still had, and a Chinese cymbal that was great, and some other stuff. And when I was little, I gravitated towards drums right away and started playing along with records as soon as I could. And my dad put blocks on the hi-hat and the bass drum pedal so my feet could reach the pedals. And I just loved it. From like 18 months, he has recordings of it, I'm banging away at stuff. And then maybe three and a half, I was listening to Lionel Hampton and Duke Ellington records and Count Basie records and Woody Herman records and whatever he had on the radio, or he had a big 78 collection, and that was always fascinating to me, to take this disc and put it on a turntable. And so there was always music in the house, mostly jazz. There used to be a great jazz station, FM jazz station called WRVR, with this DJ, Ed Beach, with a very, very low voice, very mellifluous. You're always talking about the records, and he played great stuff all day. Monk and Miles and Max Roach, Clifford Brown, and big bands, Count Basie, So a lot of music in the house all the time. And I have 4 younger brothers, 3 of whom play drums professionally. My dad still plays. He's 92. Like, for instance, last weekend he had a concert, then he had a wedding and a cocktail party. He's amazing. He swings. He's a great player. So he always had bands that were coming in, rehearsing in the house, Dixieland bands or swing bands. I just gravitated towards it. I loved it. That's the only thing I ever wanted to do. Well, the first records, it's not so much the artist, but the producer, Arif Mardin, was the guy who produced Dusty Springfield and the Young Rascals, and he was involved with Aretha Franklin's records, along with Jerry Wexler, and this whole those were the records that grabbed me. I mean, James Brown grabbed me, and Sam Cooke. I started to listen to these singers that had great rhythm sections behind them. Otis Redding was a favorite. But the Atlantic, anything with the Atlantic label or produced by Arif Mardin, said this has got to be good. Get that record, bring it home, and put it under the microscope, try to analyze everything that was on there. That was maybe, right after I started playing with strippers, I started to hear other music. At the club they would play different things. What's that? It wasn't jazz, it was more popular music and early 60s stuff, but there were some good R&B records. Some records that came up from New Orleans on the Specialty label or Ace Records. When I saw those labels, I said, this has got to be good. New Orleans, produced by Cosmo, that guy, Jim Black or Ed Blackwell. There were great drummers on those records, and it was a complete different thing than what I was listening to. So I was really intrigued by that. Depends on the music, depends on the song. I try to play what I think would work for the song. And I listen to the song, I listen to the lyrics, I try to empathize with the artist, whoever it is, what she or he is looking for the song to communicate, and how can I enhance that communication? Maybe it's brushes or sticks. I mean, it really depends on the song. I try to play for the song, the individual composition, and the artist will tell me, well, I wasn't hearing that. I was hearing more of this. Oh, okay, so we'll do that, and be open to all his suggestions. And maybe the most important thing before meeting the artist is to have this musical library in your head of all these different styles of music that you've listened to over the years, whether it's Brazilian or R&B or blues or some Celtic music, all the different things. I'm always listening, and to be an ethnomusicologist, without a degree, but just somebody who listens to all different kinds of music and is open to different interpretations, Gordon Edwards is the leader and the bass player, and I met him on a jingle for, I'm not sure what it was, Delco Batteries or something. Seems to ring a bell. Some little studio, and I just got a call to do a jingle, and he was the bass player on it. And after we did a couple of takes, he turned around and said, "You sound good, Stuffy. Why don't you come up to my club tonight?" I said, "Okay, where is it?" And he told me it was 97th in Columbus, McKell's, famous McKell's. So I went up that night, and he was on stage with Cornell Dupree and Richard T. And Charlie Brown was playing tenor. They had a singer, Esther Marrow, Queen Esther Marrow, they call her. And he spotted me coming, and he said, "Come on up." And so I hadn't heard him play. I guess they had just gotten back from a break or something. And he said, "All right, you're up." And we started playing, and I said, "Oh, that was fun. Thanks a lot." And I got ready to get up, and he said, "No, stay there." So we played another song. It might have been "Rainy Night in Georgia," a record that I was familiar with, and Cornell, I think, played on. Brooke Benton. So I knew that record. And I played it just like the record, and I said, "Thanks again," and I go, "Yeah, stay there, stay there." So they didn't let me go. I played all night, and I was getting smiles from the guys and winks, and every time I made an effort to leave, they're, "You're not done, sit right there." So that was the first night, and they said, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" I'm all yours. So I never there were drums there, but I never actually got to hear who was playing with them currently. And from that, it was a guy named Herschel Dwellingham who went on to play with Weather Report, but we never actually even met that night. So from then on, we did maybe 14 nights in a row, within a day off, and then another 14 nights in a row. So the band really evolved quickly with different tunes. They were playing Stevie Wonder tunes or Gladys Knight or Brooke Benton, stuff from the Atlantic that these guys, Cornell and Richard and Gordon, had played on, played on the records. So I was just trying to fit into Purdy's role or Grady Tate's role or Ray Lucas. There were some great drummers playing on those records. So, and that was a style that I loved. I, totally emulated that style with my playing. So I fit in. I was also working with the Brecker brothers, and they wanted to go on the road, and I said, well, I got to get a sub for the Stuff guys, and talked to him. One night I went to hear Steve at the Village Vanguard. He was playing with Joe Farrell and Joe Beck, Herb Bushler on bass. And I went up, he was amazing. And I went up to talk to him afterwards, and one thing led to another, and I said, would you be interested in subbing, on this gig uptown? He said, yeah, sure. So I went on the road with the Brecker Brothers, and I came back, and of course they had fallen in love with Steve. And then Gordon said, well, I want you both. And that's a short version of how it happened, And by that time, Eric Gale had started to come by, because these guys are on a lot of the same sessions. And we would play all night long. Last set maybe start at 2:30 in the morning and go until 4, and then come back the next night. And people would come and sit in, George Benson or Fred Wesley or the guys from Earth, Wind and Fire, whoever was in town. The word got out, and those guys would come up and sit in. I grew up with all these younger brothers, and we often had, 4 or 5 sets of drums going at once. So you learn to sort of pick your space, and to make it feel good, everybody's got to be feeling the time the same way. And Steve and I just hit it off, just locked in right away, and we never discussed, well, you play cross stick and I'll play the bell of the cymbal, it was all just completely organic, It was great. It's magical. Oh, there's a lot of stuff. He was unique approach to the guitar. Very much a singer's guitar player, that's what I do too. Listen to the singer, try to back up the singer, try to emphasize and enhance whatever the singer is doing. Unique talent, unique style of playing, so soulful and so original, And as a person, he was so laid back and paternal towards me, all right, Steffi, okay, Junior, he was always very, I was the youngest guy, clearly, but he was very understanding and supportive, and his wife, Irma, was usually there, and she was great. It was really a nice family, and just a great man, really wonderful man. And the kids, were also wonderful. Did you see Amazing Grace, the Aretha Franklin movie? I saw it, the first thing I thought, the shirt he's wearing, that's what he used to wear on the gig. I know that shirt. But same thing with Aretha. He's backing up the singer. You never notice him standing out. He might play a little lick that answers something that she sang or something, but great time, great rhythm, and great comments on the lead vocal. He was great. It was hard because they hadn't decided on the bass player yet. It ended up being Walter, his partner. May he rest in peace. He ended up playing bass, and I would have, if I'd had a choice, I would like to have done the track with the bass player at the same time. But a couple of those tracks were done just me and Donald in the studio, him playing keyboards and me playing drums, and I was trying to imagine, well, it's going to be a bass player, and hopefully he'll like what I'm doing, and he can lock into that. And it was a long process. I think we started recording in 90, maybe 92, and the record didn't come out for a couple of years, but they did one track and then sat with that for a while, and then I thought, well, I really screwed that up, and not hear from him for a while. And then, hey, we want you to come in and do another. I got a reprieve. And I ended up doing 4 tracks on the record. So, yeah, I'm proud of that work. That's good. I worked on the album Gaucho, worked on a track called Time Out of Mind, and we spent a couple of days on it and tried all different drums and all different drum heads and all different styles of stuff, and the record came out and it was Rick Marotta playing on it. So, but that was an experience with their producer and their engineer and stuff. There was a whole, the Kamakiriad stuff was more just them in the studio, and they had the studio in Maui, so it was very nice. I never thought of how do I keep my career relevant per se, but I always did listen to the current music, whatever's on the radio, whatever artists appeal to me, whether it's a songwriter or a horn player or a pianist, or and try to embrace those styles or that genre of music based on what appeals to me. That sounds good. That's got a cool groove. I like what this guy is doing, and this guy's so I'm going to embrace that, listen to that. People that I work for, a lot of them were of the same mindset, like what's current, like what's on the radio or stuff. So I adapted based on what I was hearing. I got a huge electronic setup in the late 70s, early 80s, when people were starting to use drum machines, and I did a couple of rap records with a group called Salt and Pepper, where the whole concept is not of a drum kit, but the sounds of individual drums.
So that was with electronic drums?
No, that was acoustic drums. But the producer, his concept was to do one drum at a time. First the bass drum, then the snare drum, then the hi-hat, to have ultimate control over every aspect of the kit. There's a different concept, but sure, I'll play one thing at a time. Drum machines made it possible for people who had the patience to program them. Drums do incredible things, and it's very metronomic, a perfect time all the way through. It's maybe not what a drummer would play, maybe not what you or I would play for a certain song, but that became accepted, and the exaggerated sounds you could get with the drum machine, that 808 bass, it's like a big old marching drum or something. It was a cool sound, and people, that's what they wanted to hear on the record. Or the steady bass drum for disco, that became something that they could duplicate with a machine easier than hire a guy. And so that whole transition to more electronics involved in music, sure, let's go there. So I adapted to that and innovated some stuff with combination of acoustic and electronic drums. These guys, I'm not going to mention names, tried to intimidate me right up until we walked into the courtroom. They said, "You're never going to work in this town again. You don't understand who you're messing with," and all, And my lawyer got hung up in traffic coming in from Long Island, so he didn't make the court date. And the judge said, we can either schedule a date or you can represent yourself. I said, I'll represent myself, which was, I didn't expect to do that. I had a lawyer and everything, but I just presented my case, and I had a bag full of records that I had played on. I played on all these records. All these people are satisfied, These guys somehow said they're not going to pay me for the work that I did, The judge ruled in my favor. They had to pay, and these guys were, and they're the ones who are never heard of again. No, I set out to play with the best players and make the best music that I could make, and I've achieved a lot of that, But I'm still hearing music that's challenging to me. This music that I'm practicing is to go to Japan in 9 days with Akiko Yano, who I've worked with the last 10, 11 years. She sings and plays piano and writes her own stuff, and it's Will Lee on bass and myself and her. We've been going, this will be the 11th year going to Japan with her, and it's always very, very challenging music, and I have to practice my ass off to be ready to perform it in Japan. But I love it. I love being challenged by the music and trying to rise to the level that she's at and that Will is at, to be able to make music with them and have it, you know, appreciated by an audience. It's great. Success means getting to play with great players, you know, getting to create music as part of a team of other musicians who are all concerned and endeavoring to make this a good feeling song, a good feeling record, a good feeling composition, or even a good scene in the movie, you know. Broadway show lately, Tootsie, won all these awards and stuff like that, but I played on the movie soundtrack, and I remember that, watching the movie in the studio. Dave Grusin was the composer, and being with, I think Cornell and Eric were both on it, and Anthony Jackson and Richard, and having a good time in the studio, because we're watching Dustin Hoffman and the other actors, you know, give their performance, and we're enhancing that performance. Every time I see the movie, I like that. Remember, it was a good time.
Yeah.
So that's success, you know, getting to play with good players and to have a document to show afterwards, and hey, that was a great session, you know. And if other people like it, or it turns into a hit or something, so much the better, you know. But the process is really what I would call how I would define success, that you were able to be part of this process and didn't fuck it up.
It's not real love, but it's right there whenever you want it. We can laugh and sing, carry on, party on till the morning comes, oh yeah. Oh yeah, and I wouldn't hurt you for the world. You're a special kind of girl who wouldn't hurt me in a way, because you live just for today, don't we, baby?